Welcome to another segment of Lore You Should Know. I am Greg Tito, and I am joined by Wes Schneider. Hi, Wes.
Hey, how's it going?
Very excited to talk to you about Har'akir, and this is where we discuss little bits of Dungeons & Dragons lore that you can use in your game if you're a dungeon master, or just to know for your own edification. And in celebration of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft coming out on May 18th, I've been talking to Wes about different domains of dread, and now is our time to talk about Har'akir.
Yeah.
What is going on in Har'akir?
So, the domains of dread have always had certain sort of characters, certain sort of tropes that they gravitate to. And, let's just be honest, classic horror movies have always been one of those. You've got your Dracula domain, you've got your Frankenstein domain, but among those is also your classic The Mummy style domain. And that's represented by the domain of Har'akir and its Dark Lord, the excessively immortal Pharaoh Anktapot.
Oh, all right. So when you're saying The Mummy, you're not necessarily saying the Brendan Fraser vehicle from the 90s, but you're talking about the lore of the old Universal mummy films from, the 20s and 30s, right?
Yeah, Ravenloft has always definitely been inspired by, not just Gothic literature, but clearly, Hammer horror films and just all of the pulpy over the top stories of the 50s and 60s. So yeah, they're in past editions, Pharaoh Anktapot has always come across as a very sort of Boris Karloff with a toilet paper wrapping sort of vibe to him. With Van Richten's Guide, we've wanted to go a little bit beyond there is a creepy pyramid, there is something dead and ancient inside, and go with something that's a bit more fantasy, a bit more D&D, and a bit more, in some cases, a bit more Necropolis Extreme.
Oh, well, that's exciting. So, I mean, will fans who have a love of Egyptology see parallels here in our description of Har'akir?
In all honesty, if you're coming to Har'akir and you're looking for a masterclass in ancient Egypt or Egyptology, no, you're not going to find it.
So Har'akir, with that background, what are some of the horror tropes that are present in our description of it in Van Richten's?
So, couple of different angles on Har'akir. The most basic of them is it is a desert realm. So the land itself is inhospitable to mortal life. So the pockets of civilization are relatively few within this vast desert. Beyond the desert itself, there are also these these constant sandstorms, predatory natural creature, but even more than this is the fact that the head of the ruler of the domain and the Dark Lord, Pharaoh Anktapot, is undead and is known to be immortal. And that's something that, as part of the religions and the cultures of the domain, is somewhat honored, which means that many of the other undead, the other lesser mummies, a group called the Children of Anktapot, who are animal-headed mummies, these are all revered creatures that are also tyrants over the living in their own right.
So it's almost more of a overt tyranny of this group exerting control over the denizens of
exactly. And at the same time, it's all caught up with the pantheistic religion of the domain, where it's a religion that Pharaoh Anktapot, when he came to power in the domain, he destroyed the old gods of the culture and set up these new fake gods, because he himself, part of the reason that he's in Ravenloft at this point is because he betrayed the gods that he was a high priest of. Hijinks ensue. That got him a spot in Ravenloft. But now, when he found a new land that was revering those deities, he worked to destroy them and created a new pantheon, largely with himself at the head. Part of this is also interesting because we play into the angle of Anktapot as this immortal mummy. Yep, that seems like a good gig for a while, I guess, but Anktapot is extremely old and has seen everything, has done everything, has seen this domain, knows the borders of it, knows the boundaries of it, and is still here. So part of his punishment from the gods that he blasphemed against is that they split up his soul into multiple parts. And now Anktapot is trying to find the missing part of his soul.
When in the timeline was his soul broken up? Was it when he first became Dark Lord, or did it happen over time?
That's part of his punishment. Every one of the Dark Lords throughout Van Richten's Guide doesn't just tell you the story of how the Dark Lord came into being, but it also talks about their powers, their dominion. But there's a section for each Dark Lord that expressly talks about how are they tormented. Like the Dark Lords of Ravenloft are all fundamentally prisoners. No one's having a great time as Dark Lord.
What are some of his servants? What are some of the low-level things that player characters might interact with on Har'akir?
Well, there's a few different angles on that. The most noteworthy servants of Anktapot are a group called the Children of Anktapot, which are all greater mummies who are other priests that came to Har'akir with him when he was drawn into the domains of dread.
That's really fascinating. Is there, the opportunity to throw, undead servants and stuff at players at any moment? Is it kind of overrun with undead?
It depends on where you are. There's a couple of centers of civilization throughout the domain.
Lots of possibilities there for sure. Then what happens if the different parts of the soul do get collected? Do you go into that in the book?
Yes. So we get into first a spectrum of possibilities for where Anktapot's soul might be. Like maybe it's actually hidden in like a canoptic jar in some ruin. Maybe it takes the form of like a giant eagle that's constantly circling the sun. Maybe its soul is actually one of the player character's souls. That sort of element. But once you've got it, and if you take it to Anktapot, what does he attempt to do with it? And it outlines the ritual that he would attempt to undertake to recombine that soul with his body. Probably doesn't go well for the players one way or the other, particularly if they're already using that particular soul, but those details are there for DM sticks for.
Well, very excited to learn more about Har'akir. Folks want to pepper you with questions or just give you a virtual high five. How can they do that, Wes?
The easiest way is probably on Twitter, where you can find me at FWesSchneider.
Excellent. Well, looking forward to all of the scary tales that are going to be coming around the table when Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft comes out on May 18th. And thanks a lot, Wes.
Yeah, thanks for having me.